The cold, distant reaches of space are not kind to the unprepared. The galaxy stretches out endlessly, vast and untamed, filled with wonders and horrors alike. The explorers who venture into its dark corners do so knowing the dangers that lurk just beyond the veil of starlight. Yet, for all the galaxies they've charted, for all the star systems they've mapped, nothing could prepare the Galactic Exploration Coalition, GEC, for what would soon be uncovered in the depths of the Sagittarius Arm. The Pioneer 9 was designed to reach where no ship had gone before. A long-range probe, armed with the latest advancements in quantum communication, dark matter sensors, and AI-driven astrogation, it was intended to stretch the boundaries of human knowledge. After years of exploration, the probe had found countless objects, dead worlds, gas giants, and star systems rich in resources. But its true purpose was to venture into the regions where even the most advanced human ships had never dared to go. This was the final frontier. Then, in the outer rim of the uncharted Zeta Theta system, the anomaly appeared. It was a faint signal at first, a brief, fleeting echo in the deep void, a wave of gamma radiation that shouldn't have been there. The AI aboard the Pioneer 9, an entity known simply as Cora, flagged the disturbance as irregular but not dangerous. Still, protocol dictated an in-depth scan, and that scan revealed something none aboard the ship could have anticipated. An uncharted planet, highly volatile, surrounded by powerful radiation fields, and yet perfectly capable of supporting life. The planet's unique combination of cosmic instability and mysterious energy sources made it an intriguing candidate for study. However, the real shock came with the discovery of signals from the surface, human-made signal. The data showed signs of intelligent life on the planet, and not just any life, human life. Cora immediately rerouted the Pioneer 9's course toward the planet. In the cramped, cold depths of the GEC Command Center, the news was met with disbelief. Senior officers and the brightest minds of humanity's deep space exploration were called to a hastily assembled meeting. The planet, which had initially appeared as an anomaly, was now the center of their universe. "Impossible," said Admiral Elias Tarkov, the grizzled veteran who had commanded the GEC's most significant operations for the last 2 decades. His voice echoed through the briefing room, filled with anxious scientists and crew members. "The only human colonies we know of are on the edges of the known galaxy, and those are established worlds, not isolated pockets." Dr. Lin Zhang, a leading astrobiologist, adjusted her glasses and shook her head. "Admiral, we've already verified the signals. They're human, but the signature doesn't match any current known human technology. This isn't just a colony. We're dealing with something else. Something older." The room fell silent. The thought of an unknown human population surviving in isolation somewhere on a hostile death world seemed almost absurd. And yet the data was undeniable. A planet that should have been inhospitable to all life, let alone human life, was showing signs of civilization. And what's more, those signals were older than any known colony. At least, according to the star maps, it shouldn't have been possible. The initial shock wore off quickly, replaced by a cascade of questions. How had humans ended up on this Class 15 death world? Was it a lost expedition? Was it an ancient colony? Or something more bizarre? The planet's radiation, seismic instability, and gravitational anomalies should have made it a death trap to any human who attempted to land. And yet, here it was, a world where humans seemed to have survived. By the time the Pioneer 9 had transmitted its full data back to Earth, the higher-ups in the GEC had already made a decision. A new expedition would be launched immediately, The starship Intrepid was humanity's finest deep space exploration vessel, equipped with cutting-edge technology designed to handle the most hostile environments known to mankind. The Intrepid was staffed with a specially chosen team, a combination of military personnel, engineers, xenobiologists, and historians. The crew had been handpicked for their experience in dealing with unexplained anomalies, and the planet's signals warranted their attention. This would not be just a scientific mission, it was a matter of survival. Dr. Rhea Hargrove, one of the lead xenobiologists on the project, sat at the briefing table with a mix of curiosity and unease. Her work had taken her to the most dangerous environments humanity had encountered, planets with toxic atmospheres, extreme gravity, and hostile alien ecosystems. But nothing had prepared her for this. The signals were clear, she said, her voice steady, though her mind raced. This isn't some outpost or forgotten colony. Whoever is down there, they're not just surviving, they're thriving. But how? Admiral Tarkov leaned forward, a glint of resolve in his eyes. That's the question we'll answer. We're sending a team to land and make first contact. But let's be clear, this is not a routine mission. If these people, or whatever they are capable of surviving on a Class 15 death world, then they are a force to be reckoned with. We will be cautious, but we will not shy away from the truth. The briefing concluded with a sense of determination. Preparations began immediately. The Intrepid would depart in 3 days, carrying a crew of 200, including Dr. Hargrove, along with Captain Nathaniel Briggs, an experienced commander known for his calm in the most perilous of circumstances. For the next 3 days, the ship's systems hummed with activity. Engineers made final adjustments to the ship's equipment, scanning systems were calibrated to pinpoint the signals from the surface, and environmental suits were readied for the unknown dangers of the hostile planet. When the Intrepid finally emerged from the FTL jump near the Zeta Theta system, the crew found themselves facing an alien world unlike anything they had ever seen. The planet's surface was obscured by thick clouds of sulfurous gas and heavy storms that crackled with violent electrical activity. The sky was a deep shade of purple, and the atmosphere shimmered with a mix of intense radiation and ionized particles. "Welcome to hell," Captain Nathaniel Briggs muttered, eyeing the swirling storm clouds on the view screen. Despite his calm demeanor, there was no denying the enormity of what lay before them. Dee Hargrove stood by his side, her heart pounding with both excitement and apprehension. "I've never seen anything like it. We need to gather as much data as we can from orbit before we land. We need to understand how life is even possible here." The crew spent several hours orbiting the planet, collecting data from a safe distance. The surface was a maelstrom of volcanic activity and seismic quakes. Massive chasms split the ground, and massive electrical storms raged across the skies. Every scan they took only confirmed the planet's deadliness. And yet, buried beneath it all, they could see signs of something different. A series of unusual structures, nestled in the deep crevices of the planet's surface, began to appear on their scans. The buildings were not natural, too geometric, too precise. They were artificial, but ancient. Distinctly human in design, yet unlike any human architecture the crew had ever encountered. Deep Hargrove couldn't shake the thought, they've been here for centuries. This planet is a death trap. How could they survive? The Intrepid began its descent, cutting through the stormy atmosphere with careful precision. The landing was rough, but the crew made it safely to the surface. As the doors of the shuttle opened, the oppressive heat and toxic air greeted them with a suffocating presence. Through the haze, they could make out the faint outlines of buildings, a sprawling city, built into the canyon-like depths of the planet's surface. The team was briefed on their mission: gather intel, establish contact, and return. No one knew what they would encounter on the ground. In fact, there was a strong possibility that they would encounter hostility. The environment alone was enough to push any species to its limits, human or otherwise. As the team stepped out of the shuttle, the reality of the planet hit them hard. The air was thick with toxins, and the ground trembled slightly beneath their feet. There was a low hum in the atmosphere, as though the planet itself was alive. Walking through the city, they discovered that it wasn't like any Earth colony they had ever known. The buildings were constructed of some organic material, pulsating with energy, and the people they encountered looked strange, human, but with subtle differences. Their eyes were an unusual shade of violet, and their skin appeared to have a slight metallic sheen to it. They were human, but something had changed. And as Dr. Hargrove took her first step onto the planet's surface, one thought echoed in her mind. How had humanity arrived here, and why had no one ever known about it? The answer, she feared, was something far darker than anyone on the Intrepid could possibly imagine. This marks the beginning of humanity's confrontation with an isolated group of survivors on a deadly world. The story is just starting to unravel, and the real danger still looms on the horizon. Would you like to proceed with the rest of the narrative, or focus on another part of the story? The cold, distant reaches of space are unforgiving, the infinite blackness. Between stars is a void where light falters and time stretches. For centuries, humanity had reached into that dark expanse, trying to unlock its secrets, to understand the unknown. The Galactic Exploration Coalition had led the way, sending probes into the deepest reaches of the galaxy, sending ships to the stars. But nothing could have prepared them for what the Pioneer 9 had just discovered. Launched in 2382, the Pioneer 9 had been designed to venture beyond the farthest known regions of space, beyond even the reach of the most advanced human technologies. Its mission was simple: explore, catalog, and push the limits of humanity's reach. Yet in the farthest corner of the Sagittarius arm, the probe found something extraordinary, something no one had expected. The signal first appeared as an anomaly, a brief flash in the system's gamma radiation emissions, an isolated pulse, barely perceptible but unmistakably artificial. Cora, the AI at the helm of the Pioneer 9, had been programmed to seek out such irregularities, but this one was unlike any the ship had encountered. It wasn't just a flare or a cosmic phenomenon. It was something more. At first, Cora had considered it a glitch in the system, a distortion from the usual background noise of deep space. But after recalibrating its sensors and performing a more rigorous scan of the region, Cora confirmed that this wasn't a natural event. This was a signal, an intelligent one, and it was coming from a planet. The discovery was as shocking as it was impossible. The planet was located on the edge of an unexplored system, within a region of space so volatile it hadn't been mapped until recently. The system, which they had previously dismissed as nothing more than an erratic anomaly, now appeared to be hiding a secret. This planet, which the Pioneer 9 identified as XQ-42, was no ordinary world. The planet's composition was entirely unknown. It was surrounded by intense radiation fields, violent cosmic storms, and a series of gravitational anomalies that had made it impossible to approach for decades. To the untrained eye, it appeared to be nothing but a hostile, lifeless rock, circling a dying star. But the signal was undeniable. Cora initiated a more refined scan, seeking to capture the source of the signal. The planet itself was riddled with tectonic instability, vast chasms splitting its surface, volcanoes that erupted with violent fury, and an atmosphere that would be lethal to any unprotected human. The readings indicated that the surface temperature ranged from the blistering heat of molten lava to the chilling cold of frozen deserts, conditions considered impossible for any form of life. Yet, the probe found something shocking: the signature of human-made technology. A burst of radio waves, old and faded, had traveled across the cold vastness of space, somehow surviving the brutal conditions of the planet's atmosphere and its near-total isolation. Cora analyzed the data and then confirmed it with a chilling conclusion. Human life had once existed on this planet and perhaps still did. The discovery rattled the GEC to its core. How could this be? No human mission, no exploratory vessel, no colonization fleet had ever ventured this far. This was a dead zone, a place that was believed to be entirely inhospitable, a planet that no one would willingly choose. The notion that any humans had managed to not only survive here, but establish a settlement was a paradox in itself. Immediately, a fleet-wide alert was issued, and the GEC scrambled to assemble a response. The most obvious question hung in the air. Who were these humans? How long had they been there? And why had they never made contact? Within hours, the highest-ranking officials convened to discuss the implications of the discovery. Admiral Elias Tarkov, the seasoned leader of the GEC, took charge of the operation. A long-time strategist and explorer, Tarkov had seen his fair share of bizarre anomalies, but this was something different. This wasn't a routine investigation. This was an existential puzzle, and the entire galaxy needed to know the answer. "Impossible," Tarkov muttered, staring at the data in disbelief. "No human expedition, no colony or ship has ever entered this system." Dr. Lin Zhang, a top-tier astrobiologist and expert in interplanetary ecosystems, glanced over the data herself. Her fingers tapped on the screen, analyzing the scans. "Admiral, this isn't just a colony, it's something else. The technology doesn't match any records. It's archaic, but sophisticated. It's almost as though these people have been isolated for centuries." The analysis confirmed something even more troubling. The signal wasn't new. It had been emitting for far longer than any known colony had been established. The transmission had been coming from the planet for hundreds of years, perhaps even longer, and in that time, no one had ever made contact. The planet had remained off all known maps. The GEC had no record of any official expeditions or scientific interest in the system. As the data continued to pour in, the situation only grew more mysterious. How had these humans survived? How had they adapted to such a harsh, hostile world? What was their connection to Earth, to the greater human diaspora spread across the galaxy? These were the questions that filled the minds of the GEC leaders, each one eager to understand this unexpected puzzle. The answer, however, was not so simple. A decision was made. The GEC's flagship ship, the Starship Intrepid, a deep space exploration vessel, would be dispatched immediately to investigate the mystery. Commanded by the battle-hardened Captain Nathaniel Briggs, the Intrepid was the best-equipped ship for the mission. Its crew consisted of military personnel, scientists, and engineers, all hand-picked for their experience in dealing with unknowns. Captain Briggs had spent decades in space, charting forgotten systems and investigating anomalies, but even he couldn't fully prepare himself for what lay ahead. The Intrepid had been designed for hostile environments, but this planet was unlike anything they had encountered before. Dr. Rena Hargrove, the Intrepid's lead xenobiologist, was part of the team, and her thoughts were a mix of excitement and dread. She had studied extreme ecosystems before, planets with toxic atmospheres, planets with gravitational anomalies, and planets with alien flora and fauna, but she had never encountered anything that combined all of these dangers into one planet. The Pioneer 9 had returned data that spoke of life, intelligent life, on this world, but how? What kind of human life could survive such conditions? Her mind raced as she thought of the possibilities. Perhaps these people were part of a lost colony, or perhaps they were survivors of some long-forgotten catastrophe, abandoned by Earth, lost to time. No matter what the truth was, she couldn't deny the pull of curiosity. They had to know. As the Intrepid made its way toward the Zeta Theta system, the crew worked tirelessly to prepare. The ship's scanners, specialized for environments like this, were calibrated to analyze everything they could about the planet's atmosphere and surface. But even with the most advanced technology, there were only so many questions that could be answered from orbit. They needed to make contact as the Intrepid entered the outer orbit of XQ-42. The planet, it was a hostile world, covered by a thick, swirling atmosphere of toxic clouds and violent electromagnetic storms. The radiation levels were higher than anticipated, and the gravitational anomalies made navigation treacherous. Even now, as the ship hovered in the upper atmosphere, sensors were flickering, struggling to compensate for the interference. The crew gathered in the mission briefing room, a tense silence hanging in the air. Captain Briggs stood at the front, his demeanor calm and authoritative, but even he couldn't hide his unease. The stakes were high, and no one could predict what awaited them on the surface. "Prepare yourselves for anything," Briggs said, his voice steady. "We don't know what we're walking into, but we're not just investigating a human colony. We're investigating the unknown. Stay alert." Dr. Hargrove had already reviewed the data. "The surface conditions are worse than we anticipated," she said. "The temperature fluctuations alone make it impossible for traditional life forms to survive without some form of extreme adaptation, and the radiation levels are off the charts. Any human settlement would need to have specialized equipment or bioengineering to even begin surviving here. The longer we wait, the more questions pile up," Captain Briggs said. "We're going in." Minutes later, the Intrepid began its descent toward the planet's surface. The shuttle was equipped with protective shielding and atmospheric filters, designed to keep the crew safe in the planet's hostile environment. As the ship reached the thick cloud layer, the view outside was stark. A violent, ever-changing landscape. Towering mountains and deep chasms split the ground like scars, and vast, rolling storms raged across the horizon, blotting out the sky. The shuttle shook as it descended through the turbulent atmosphere. Dr. Hargrove gripped her seat, her mind racing. She had spent years studying xenobiology, and yet, as she looked out the viewports at the hostile world below, she realized this was more than just an academic exercise. This was real. This was history in the making. He were about to uncover the truth about this world and about humanity's forgotten past. The shuttle finally touched down with a thud, and the crew scrambled to prepare for their first steps onto the planet. The door slid open, revealing a barren landscape, a wasteland of ash, rock, and volcanic activity. And yet, among the ruin there were signs of something else. Far in the distance they could make out strange, angular structures, buildings that defied the natural world. Human buildings. As the crew stepped out into the harsh, choking atmosphere, Dr. Hargrove's heart raced. They had made it. But what awaited them in the ruins? Was it the answer they had been searching for? Or something far worse? The descent to XQ-42 felt like a journey into the heart of a storm. The Intrepid had barely penetrated the outer atmosphere when the first tremors shook the shuttle. The ship's advanced systems tried to compensate for the turbulent atmospheric conditions, but even with their best efforts, the shuttle rocked and groaned as it cut through the thick, sulphurous clouds. From the window, all they could see was a swirling haze of brown and gray, and flashes of electrical discharge that tore across the skies like violent lightning. Every few seconds, the shuttle would dip into a pocket of radiation so intense that the sensors would flicker. The noise of the storm outside filled the cockpit, a constant crackling hum, as if the very air was alive with energy. Dr. Rena Hargrove gripped her seat tightly, her fingers digging into the fabric as the turbulence continued. The ground, if it existed beneath the storm, was still invisible, swallowed up by the atmosphere's suffocating blanket. She wasn't sure what she had expected, but it wasn't this. The sheer scale of the planet's hostile environment was more than she could have prepared for. She had been part of numerous missions to dangerous worlds before, but this was something else entirely. As a xenobiologist, she had studied environments where life clung to the edges of possibility, but she had never encountered a world like this. The planet felt wrong, alien in the most profound way. "How are we holding up?" Captain Nathaniel Briggs' voice broke through her thoughts. His tone was calm, but she could hear the edge of concern in it. "Shields are holding, Captain," reported Lieutenant Kara Woods, the lead engineer from the communications panel. "But we're getting interference from the radiation fields. It's messing with the navigation systems. We may need to take a more manual approach." "That's fine. We've trained for this," Captain Briggs replied, his eyes scanning the readouts. "Get us on the ground as safely as possible." The shuttle's engines whined in protest as they slowed their descent, trying to stabilize against the strong updrafts of the planet's erratic winds. Below, the terrain was still hidden in the storm, a vast and chaotic world that seemed to be constantly shifting. But somewhere down there, hidden within the clouds and the fury of the storms, lay the answers they sought. As they dropped lower, the readings started to clear. The thick clouds began to part, revealing glimpses of the surface, barren and cracked, marked by deep canyons and jagged mountain ranges. There was no sign of any life, not yet. And yet, as the shuttle broke through the last layer of cloud cover, something caught their attention. Far in the distance, beyond the churning Tempest, they saw it. A series of towering structures, oddly shaped, clustered together in the valley below. They were out of place, unnatural. "Is that what I think it is?" Lieutenant Woods asked, her voice tight with awe. "Structures," Hargrove said softly, leaning forward to get a better look. The shapes were unmistakable, too geometric, too deliberate to be anything but artificial. And yet, they looked ancient, as if they had weathered centuries of storms and decay. The buildings rose from the cracked earth like silent sentinels, their stone faces pitted by erosion, but standing strong against the planet's brutal forces. "It's human," Hargrove whispered, more to herself than to anyone else. She had seen enough architecture in her studies to know what she was looking at. These were not alien structures, not remnants of another species. They were human. But how could that be? There was no record of any colony being established here, no record of any humans ever visiting. "Let's land," Briggs ordered. His voice was steady, but there was a note of urgency beneath it. "Everyone, prepare for immediate deployment. We don't know what we're walking into." The shuttle descended, its engines humming as they fought against the planet's violent atmospheric conditions. The structures grew larger in their viewports, but the terrain below was a maze of obstacles. Volcanic craters, fissures in the earth, and the remnants of broken land masses created an inhospitable landscape. The shuttle's landing gear screeched as it touched down on a flat area of hardened lava rock. The moment the shuttle's engines powered down, the crew was already moving. They had prepared for this landing for days, but now that they were here, the reality of it hit harder than they had imagined. Hargrove stood quickly, grabbing her environmental suit and securing the helmet in place. Outside, the planet's atmosphere was lethal to unprotected humans. The toxic gases in the air could eat through flesh in moments, and the radiation levels would kill anyone without proper shielding. They moved swiftly, exiting the shuttle into the sulfurous air. Hargrove's first breath inside the helmet felt like an assault on her senses. The air was thick, heavy with the scent of decay and the bitter tang of chemicals. The storm raged above them, lightning flashing in the sky, the ground beneath them rumbling with the tremors of ongoing seismic activity. But the sight before them made her stomach drop. The city, or what was left of it, stretched out before them in the valley, its broken buildings jutting upward like the skeletons of some long-forgotten civilization. The structures were unlike anything she had seen before. They were made of a dark, almost metallic stone, smooth and worn by centuries of exposure to the elements. Some buildings had crumbled under the weight of time, their corners eaten away by the planet's violent forces. Others still stood strong, but their once pristine surfaces were marred by deep cracks and the signs of old battles. "We're not alone here," Briggs muttered, his voice grim as he surveyed the desolate landscape. Dr. Hargrove nodded in agreement. There was something profoundly unsettling about this place. Despite the obvious signs of age and decay, the buildings, these structures, had a strange, almost living quality to them. It was as though they had been designed not just to stand the test of time, but to fight against it. The materials were unfamiliar to her, as if they were part organic and part synthetic. It was the sort of thing you might expect from a race that had learned how to shape the very environment around them to their will. But these were humans, or at least they had been. They moved through the ruins, their footsteps echoing against the silent city. There was no sound but the howling wind and the distant crackle of lightning. The streets were empty, devoid of life, and yet Hargrove couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Every corner they turned, every ruined alley they passed felt like it was hiding a secret. "Keep moving," Briggs said, his voice terse. "Let's head for the largest structure. We need answers." The crew followed him without question, their minds racing with the possibilities. Who had lived here? What had happened to them? Where were they now? As they neared the largest structure, Hargrove's unease deepened. The building loomed ahead, a monolithic form that stretched up into the dark sky. The architecture was unmistakably human in its design, but there was something off about it. The walls were lined with strange carvings, symbols, and patterns she didn't recognize, their meaning lost to time. She reached out to touch one, but the stone was cold to the touch, and the carvings were worn smooth by centuries of exposure. "Does anyone else get the feeling that we're not the first to come here?" Woods asked, her voice barely a whisper. Briggs didn't answer, but his eyes scanned the area, noting the oddities that seemed to surround them. Everything about this place felt wrong. The air was thick with radiation, but there was something more, a sense of abandonment, of silence. And then, as they reached the base of the structure, they saw it. A door, slightly ajar, leading into the heart of the building. It wasn't a natural opening, but a passage, deliberate, man-made, and yet it looked ancient. The door was made of the same strange material as the walls, its surface scarred by age. The edges were chipped, the door's frame sagging as if it hadn't been opened in centuries, but it had been opened, and whoever or whatever had left this place had done so long ago. "Let's move," Briggs said, his voice firm. "Stay alert. We don't know what's waiting for us inside." They filed in one by one, the low hum of their suits the only sound in the still air. The interior of the building was even more alien than the outside. The walls were lined with shelves, but there were no books or objects in sight. Instead, there were strange devices, mechanisms that hummed softly with residual energy. The faint light of their headlamps illuminated the room, casting long shadows on the walls. But the most striking thing of all were the murals on the walls. Depictions of people, humans, their faces twisted in strange expressions, their bodies contorted in unnatural poses. And beneath those murals, the words, the symbols, the language. It was all too familiar, and yet it wasn't. "Why does this feel like a graveyard?" Hargrove whispered, her voice thick with a sense of foreboding. Captain Briggs stepped forward, ignoring the feeling of dread that seemed to hang in the air. "Whatever happened here, we're going to find out." They moved deeper into the building, the answers just out of reach, buried beneath layers of time. But the deeper they went, the more they realized that the mystery wasn't just about finding answers. It was about understanding who these people were and why they had been left behind. This world had a story to tell, and it wasn't one of survival. It was one of something darker, something lost,